and being able to look around. And I was the guy who would look around the screen because you do have to look around quite a bit to snag all the hidden stuff in the game. So I was in control of that while he just blasted the shit out of people. He loved it. And, you know, and it is much easier to reload when you're using the gun, because the reload comes from using the nunchuck as opposed to using the Wii remote,
and
which some people have difficulty with.
Can we stop and talk about that for a second? Because that was Suma and I's biggest complaint about this game, is that, okay, imagine this. You're holding your Wiimote, right, and you're aiming with it. And then you've got the nunchuck, and the nunchuck has the nubby on it, so the nubby is, you know, doing your limited movement right there, right? So it would make sense to me in a game design way that since I don't actually use the nunchuck with the nubby to aim, that I would shake that to reload. However, the game has an inherent flaw, and that is that you must shake your Wiimote to reload it. Now, that doesn't sound so bad, Wheat, but imagine this. You're fighting off 10 zombies, suddenly you run out of ammo, and you've got to go like this. What happens is your reticle on the screen goes like all over the place, and then you're spending like a minute trying to get it to re-register on the Wii. Now, Force didn't have the same problem, and this is going to spark an interesting little discussion here, because Force says, you know, I'm so used to playing Wii games that I sort of know my sweet spots.
Does that make it
right?
right?
I mean, you know, I think that you can't. It makes sense to me, though. You know, like Force has his motion bar in one area. When you sit down, Force, I assume that you just sort of know where your sweet spots are.
I do.
You know, and so from that perspective, I can understand it being a little bit easier. Okay, I can reload because I know where my sweet spots are. I mean, Suma, we obviously don't come in here and play Wii every day.
I don't know where my sweet spots are.
With that being said, I'm sort of with you. Now, does that mean that suddenly I have to be a Wii-aholic in order to, you know, and have to like...
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to design games or do things for the lowest common denominator. So to only design a game for someone that maybe just happened to spend hours upon hours with his Wii is kind of just wrong. I thought the gameplay gameplay was god-awful. I think mapping reload to what you're aiming with is the most retarded thing I've ever heard of. The game was incredibly boring.
Yeah, why couldn't you just like click a button to reload?
Well, exactly.
The whole thing was really slow. I mean, we sort of alluded to it in sound a little bit when we laughed at what Force had said about walking around. I really felt 75% of the time I'm walking around and looking at rain or a wall or bugs on the floor, and like it was just pretty much all around awful, and I hated it.
Let's take a look at our gameplay scores here. Wow, holy crap. Well, I gave gameplay a 5. Force was a little bit more forgiving with a 7.
Typical.
Suma,
No.
you dropped it all the way down to a 2.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh, I'm honest. What can I say?
It is not a 2, guys. It's an on-rail shooter, and it does everything that on-rail
shooters do. It's an awful on-rail
do.
shooter. Usually in on-rail shooters, there's action and there's actual shooting. In this one, you get to watch stuff.
There are stages where it is non-stop
action. You get to watch brown walls
and there are stages where it paces
itself. And then there's slugs on the ground that walk around.
Well, you know, and Force is right. You know, there are the intense moments, but the pacing of the game is not forgiving by any means. You will spend the first 3 levels sort of going like, I almost wish it was just nothing but action. In fact, it may have made for a better game if they just kept throwing fucking zombies if there's zombies at me. But I felt like
I really feel like the reloading took away a lot of the gameplay for me.
It did.
See, that was never a problem for me. And you also swing your knife, and we would swing our knife like freaking crazy, and we'd always be able to come back, you know, and aim it. I'll tell you that the guy I played with Schizo doesn't ever play the Wii, you know, and he had no problem with it at all. It was never an issue for us at all. So you guys we had very different experiences.
Very different experiences. So let's real quickly go through the fun factor. Guys, I mean, for me, and you can just throw up our scores right here, camera. For me, I gave fun factor a 3.
Oh,
you know,
I mean,
and Force, I just want to say this because I know you're probably disappointed that I give it a 3, but take it from this perspective, guys, okay? This is not a 3 because I hate the Wii, okay? This is more a 3 because I love Resident Evil. And quite frankly, I think that this is a fucking travesty to the Resident Evil franchise. When I play Resident Evil or when I see Resident Evil, I want to play it in the conventional sense of Code Veronica, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, you know, Director's Cut, or 4. I don't, you know, I felt like this was sort of cheating Resident Evil fans out there. I
thought this was a bonus to Resident Evil fans. I loved getting to revisit this shit, seeing new full motion video, new cutscenes, and when you get into it, you know, like I got through the first 12, and I've liked getting to see these behind the scenes shit.
I see.
But I've also been a huge fan of it for a long time, so this was up my alley.
And that's where we're a little bit different. So
yeah, I mean, I've never been a fan of the Resident Evil series, so I mean, for me liking this game had absolutely everything to do with the controls, the on-rails, and all that stuff. Story aside, history aside, I just base it purely on my experience with the game.
All right. So, well, we need to look at our overalls here because we're already getting over, and I have a few.
Oh, and it made me motion sick. So if you have a little bit of motion sickness,
or you're a pussy,
watch out. Or a pussy.
Either way. Or. Overall scores, even with Force's, I guess, generous numbers, it still got a 70%. I gave it a 53%, and Suma's all the way down on 40%.
That was pretty generous.
Guys, you know, I'm not going to tell you to not buy this one, and I'm not going to tell you to not rent it. If you're a Resident Evil fan and you think that you'd at least like to give this a shot, you know, you should, and take Force's review score maybe a little bit more to heart than our review score.
Use it as a cat litter scooper or something.
I didn't like the conventional Wii controls. I'm definitely, you know, and maybe this is just my spiting Capcom for not getting a legitimate Resident Evil. Yes, I know that Resident Evil 5 is coming out.
The real Resident Evil is coming for real consoles.
Force, real quickly, again, it's like you said that it was sort of a bonus to you. Well, you know, to me, it wasn't, because I don't think I should have to play an on-rail shooter to get all this great stuff. I want a fucking real next-gen Resident Evil that is going to give throwback to all of these old games that I used to play on the PlayStation and stuff. And it doesn't look like Resident Evil 5 is going to do that at all. So while I'm going to obviously still play the game, and I understand that they were just trying to find a medium. Now, did you beat it, Force?
I did.
So,
and not only did I beat it, and I have not completely beat it, but there's tons of unlockables, tons of little side missions where you get personal insights into characters, and you know, if you put time into it, you know, it pays off in the long run. I don't think the game did anything exceptional, but you know, they set out to make a light gun game, and I have a light gun game, and I enjoyed it for what they set out to do.
So what is your take, Force? And then we'll close this review officially. Is this a try or a buy?
Do you know what? At the discount price, it was a buy for me. You know, for some, it's probably only going to be a rental. It really depends on how much you like Resident Evil. If you love it and you get interested in all that side shit and extra information, it's right up your alley. If you just want to see what your Wii Zapper is like, just rent it.
All right, there you go. Force's review. I would probably say listen to him more than you're going to listen to us two. But if you're like Suma and I in terms of gamers and you're a little bit more selective, you might find
if you hate the Wii, this isn't going to change your opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Force. So, any final comments, Suma?
Don't rent it or buy it.
All right.
Wait for the real next gen version to come out.
All right, which